2019. And what does that mean? It's time to start making off-season videos. All right.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy, Shaka Antoine. And in today's video is going to be picking a proper rod. I decided to make this video because over and over again, I always see someone, if not many, folks asking, hey, what rod and reel should I use to fish a given location? So I decided to, since that's a question that's often asked, I decided to put this video together just to kind of basically go over what are the things that are going through my mind when I'm picking a rod. Hopefully it'll help you guys out there with making the decisions that you have to make when picking a rod. All right, now there's about 6 things that I look at or look for when I am picking a specific rod. All right, so let's go and start with the first one. Now the first thing that tends to catch my eye and concern is the guides. Does it have K guides or tangle-free guides? I remember when I was first started out striper fishing, man, I used to get plagued with wind knots. Line gets knotted, it pops, or I would hear that sound that nobody wants to hear while casting, which is we have a wind knot and it's going through the guide. I found a video online that had some slow motion footage of how the line interacts with the rod and the guide as it's actually getting a wind knot. So ever since I saw that video, I decided that I would definitely be fishing K guides from that point on, because what the video described that happens is that the line, as it's coming off of the spool, it's beginning to wrap around the guide, and if it doesn't catch the guide and snap right there, then that loop will actually cause the knot and go through the guide, and that's the sound that you hear. So after that, it's like, nope, no more regular guides for me. K guides is the way to go. So that's one major, or the first thing that I look for. The second thing is, does it have an NGC layout or New Guides Concept layout? And that basically is proper spacing for the size of the reel to the actual layout of the guides. All right, there is an angle, which I believe they call it the choke angle, which basically determines how far the first guide of a collector guide should be away from your spool based upon the size of the spool. That's like a lot of builder terminology. I'm not a builder, but this is as a result of some research that I did, and also it's what I'm actually looking for. You can also tell if a rod has an NGC layout by looking at the very first 5 guides. They are typically very close to each other, and they're a lot smaller than the rest of the guides and than many of the guides. That's the quickest indication that whomever built that rod, whether if it be a factory rod or an actual custom rod, if it was built using the NGC layout, if those first 5 guides are pretty small and close together. I find that that actually does help with controlling the line as it's coming off of the spool and during the cast, and as the line is continuing to peel off the spool. That's why they're so small. It's controlling the line and making it a lot easier for the line to come off without tangling. All right, moving along to number 3, the measurements from the seat to the butt of the rod. For me, that measurement is most comfortable at between 26 and 28 inches. That gives me the best leverage on the rod. That relates to properly being able to load the rod. If it's not between 26 and 28 inches, man, I'm having trouble casting that rod. I'll have to choke up, and then if I'm choking up, that cuts into my form. There is a proper form that you should have while casting, which I'll get into in a little bit. But that measurement is what allows me to take advantage of the size of that rod, no matter what size it is, as long as that stretch there is between 26 and 28. It's a very comfortable ride for me. All right, let's move right along, and I believe we are up to number 4. Okay, number 4 is the wraps. I like simple styling to my rod. I don't particularly like to have too much going on the rod. I prefer a predominantly black rod with either red or gold strips. That's what just catches my eye. It's caught my eye on many of the rods that I have. They basically have that type of theme going on with them. There is a section on the rod where most people put something decorative. I typically like to have a carbon wrap there, or a graphite wrap. Carbon fiber is just a material that, man, I just adore for its strength and lightweight, and also the look of it. I like that pattern, so I usually like to have something like that on my rods if possible. If not, no big deal. All right, moving along to number 5, the action / power and ratings, which basically relates to how it bends. Now, this is not going to be a rod building video, so I'm not going to dive too much into the bend of the rod. I'll save that for another one if I ever get to make that type of a video. All right. Now, with the primary rods that I've been using, these are some of the specs. For the 11-foot Carnage 2, that one is a moderate fast action. Its power is medium heavy, and it's rated for lures in the 2 to 6 ounce range. The Airwave Elite that I'm also using is an 11-foot 4, and it's extra heavy. That one is rated for lures in the 4 to 8 ounce range. Moving right along to the number 6, which is the final thing, which also can be considered the first thing to think about when fishing or when picking a rod, and it is its use. Is it an all-around rod, or is it something that I would be planning on using in a specific location, rather it be Montauk or the canal or the back bay, the jetties, the inlet, or pier. It's very important to understand or know or have an idea of where you will be using the rod, because where can determine a lot of your needs in the rod. Right? And for instance, as an example, the rod that I typically jig with on the canal is the very same rod that I use for when I decide to fish bait. It's all dual purpose for me. There's no need for me to get a specific bait rod and a rod to jig the canal. So I sort of combined both uses or both purposes. They work together just fine, and you can do that with several other rods. For instance, any rod, anytime I'm fishing, I am not fishing the canal, or I am not bait fishing, I typically have one rod that I use, and that rod is usually rated at 2 to 6. But of course, now I have this DNA, which is rated 1 to 5. All right, now there was a question that someone had asked me And this was the question. This is a very good question. And it's something to consider as well. Any recommendations for a saltwater spinning rod and reel set up for striped bass that won't break the bank? It's a very good question, and also something that most people will consider when picking a rod. To answer that question, my answer is going to be it depends on where I intend on using the rod and how much I'm comfortable with paying for it. But generally, the Carnage 2 and Airwave Elite would be what I recommend if you don't want to break the bank. For the reel, my first choice will always be either a VS or a Z, and that's based upon the type of fishing that I do and the quality and strength that I require a reel to have. However, if you don't want to pull that trigger, then there is another alternative that I pretty much use when I'm not using my VS, which is the Penn Slammer 3. Now, I like to use that reel primarily because it's very smooth and the gears are very strong. It's very important to me. All the other features, not necessarily all, but those are the two that really stick out the most for me. It is a backup if whatever reason my van stall is down, then yeah, it takes on that responsibility. Plus, it's what I almost exclusively use while bait fishing and on the canal. All right, now hey, that's it. This is the 6 things that are running through my mind when I'm considering picking a fishing rod. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And please, again, remember to have a great day and God bless.